The stars stretched endlessly outside the windows of the council chamber, a tapestry of glittering lights, each one marking a planet, a civilization, or a story yet to be told. Human delegates stood in quiet awe, staring at the vastness of space, knowing that they were no longer alone in the galaxy. For centuries, humans had dreamed of reaching the stars, of meeting other beings, and now the moment had arrived. And yet, even in this magnificent moment, unease simmered beneath the surface. The Council had convened to integrate humanity into a multi-species diplomatic network. It was a rare honor, but also a delicate challenge. Humans had never faced other civilizations on such a scale, and the protocols, languages, and traditions were alien in every sense of the word. It was only when the humans learned about their so-called government-assigned partners that confusion turned into quiet panic. The term wives had been mistranslated, or perhaps deliberately simplified. What it actually meant in the alien language was something closer to lifelong service partners, beings bonded to serve and assist a human delegate in every aspect of council life. To the aliens, obedience and service were the ultimate gift. To humans, the idea felt invasive, uncomfortable, and, honestly, wrong. When the delegation first arrived at the starport, the partners were already waiting. They moved in unison, their expressions neutral but polite, eyes filled with a mixture of curiosity and expectation. The humans noticed immediately how strange it felt to have another being present purely because they were told to be there. The first human to meet her partner was Leora Hayes. She had been chosen as a representative because of her ability to mediate between cultures, to understand, and to adapt. But standing before a being who had been instructed to obey her in all things was a challenge even she could not have anticipated. Her partner's name was Vila. She approached with graceful precision, bowing slightly in accordance with her culture's rules. Her clothing shimmered faintly in the artificial light, designed not for fashion but for practicality, allowing freedom of movement and signaling readiness to serve. Leora cleared her throat, unsure what to say first. "Hello, I'm Leora Hayes," she said slowly. "I will be your host, I suppose." "You are my human assignment?" she asked. Her voice was calm, even like a machine reading a script. "Yes," Leora admitted, though her stomach knotted at the word, "but I think there's been a misunderstanding." To the aliens, the ultimate expression of respect was total compliance. Humans had a different idea of respect, one that involved listening, understanding, and most importantly, consent. She tried to explain, choosing her words with care. "Vila, I don't expect you to serve me in the way your society might expect. We humans believe in choice, autonomy. You are not obligated to do anything you do not want to do, even to leave if you want." Others, like Professor Amir Kane, were fascinated, observing the partners with keen interest. Amir had always believed that human ingenuity was not about dominating, but about teaching, learning, and evolving. Now, he had the chance to prove it on a galactic scale. The first council dinner was a tense affair. Humans sat with their partners, learning to navigate etiquette, conversation, and the delicate balance of authority and respect. Vila, for example, asked questions politely, but her eyes betrayed a curiosity that could not be suppressed. She wanted to understand humans, their thoughts, their customs, and their strange insistence on freedom. Leora found herself explaining simple things she had never thought to teach. "We eat together because it is social. We do not require a partner to serve us. We share food as equals." Vila listened carefully, nodding, and occasionally repeating phrases to herself in quiet contemplation. Other partners were less tentative, more rigid, still bound tightly to the obedience protocols of their civilizations. Delegates had to learn patience, to recognize that these beings were not tools, but sentient creatures who had never considered what it meant to have free will. The humans were teaching them something radical, almost revolutionary, that being given the freedom to choose could be a gift, not a threat. As the days passed, small victories began to emerge. One partner learned to express a preference for activities, choosing which discussions to participate in. Another discovered a talent for art, drawing intricate designs that represented their feelings for the first time. Humans watched, quietly proud, as the partners explored their identities. Yet the process was not without awkwardness. Some partners tested boundaries, unsure whether their choices were truly accepted. Leora had to gently reassure Vila multiple times. "It's okay to make mistakes," she said. "We all do, even humans." Vila's eyes widened at this admission. She had never heard a being admit imperfection without fear of punishment. By the end of the first week, something remarkable had happened. The partners were beginning to understand that humans were not weak because they allowed choice. They were strong because they trusted others to act with integrity. They began to ask questions that had never occurred to them. Why do you smile when something is difficult? Why do you allow disagreements? Why do you care if I do not obey? In the quiet moments when no one else was watching, the partners began to reveal their personalities, curiosity, humor, and even a subtle pride in learning something new. Leora observed Vila as she carefully arranged her notes for a council meeting. The aliens' movements were precise, yet there was a grace to them that no human could mimic. She realized that teaching someone to think for themselves did not diminish their usefulness, it enhanced it. Vila was no longer a mere assigned partner. She was a colleague, a companion, and a friend. The humans had expected resistance, fear, and conflict. Instead, they found a galaxy of beings ready to learn, to adapt, and to grow. They discovered that humanity's greatest strength was not its weapons, its speed, or even its technology. It was the ability to value freedom, to encourage choice, and to respect the worth of every sentient being. And yet, the shadow of misunderstanding lingered. Other civilizations watched closely. Their interpretations of human behavior varied. Some saw kindness as weakness. Others, curiosity as indecision. The human delegates knew that this first week was only the beginning. The true challenge would be to demonstrate that strength could exist in gentleness, that influence could come not from orders, but from respect, and that being human meant something far more profound than anyone had imagined. As the first council meeting approached, Leora took a deep breath and glanced at Vila. "Are you ready?" she asked. Vila paused, considering, then she nodded, a small, confident movement. "I am ready to choose." The stars outside shimmered, reflecting the promise of new beginnings. For the first time, humans felt the weight of history and the hope of the future pressing together. They had arrived at the Galactic Council not as conquerors, but as teachers, learners, and examples of what a species could achieve when it embraced the best of itself. The journey had only just begun, but already the galaxy was paying attention. The council chamber was larger than any human building had ever been. Its walls shimmered with a subtle, ever-changing light, reflecting the stars outside and the diverse shapes of alien delegates seated along long, curved tables. Humans, dressed in simple suits and formal wear, took their places with a mix of awe and nervous energy. The room was silent for a moment as the various species sized each other up, some whispering in their own languages, some observing with unreadable expressions. Leora sat with Vila at her side, trying to anticipate the partners' reactions. Vila had grown more comfortable with humans over the past week, but council meetings were still strange to her. In her culture, meetings were conducted strictly according to hierarchy, with obedience expected at every level. Humans did not follow such rules. They debated, disagreed politely, and even contradicted each other openly. To Vila, it seemed chaotic but also alive. The first agenda item was a simple introduction. Each species was to present itself and its priorities for the council year. The humans were last. They had prepared a speech that emphasized collaboration, ethical growth, and the importance of understanding diverse civilizations. Leora's voice carried through the chamber as she spoke, calm but firm. "Esteemed members of the council," she began, "we humans are honored to join your network. We come not to dominate but to learn, to share, and to respect the choices of every being. We believe that strength comes not from control, but from trust, cooperation, and mutual understanding." Vila listened intently, noting the reactions, and took mental notes. She had begun to notice patterns in human behavior that she did not fully understand. Humans often appeared indecisive at first, yet their decisions were deeply considered. They questioned, debated, and sometimes even delayed action, but when they chose, their commitment was unwavering. After the introductions, a council elder, a tall being with translucent skin that glowed softly, asked, "Humans, you speak of trust and cooperation. Yet you also have partners assigned to you. How does this align with your values?" "They are assigned to work with us, but every action is a choice. We do not command them. We invite collaboration, and they are free to participate, question, or even leave if they wish. We believe in choice as the foundation of trust." In many civilizations, obedience was not only expected, it was revered. The humans' explanation seemed both risky and revolutionary. One of the alien delegates, a small creature with 4 eyes and a voice that sounded like wind through metal, asked, "If your partners are free, why do they remain with you? What prevents them from abandoning you?" For the first time, she spoke in the council. Her voice was calm, yet carried a tone of thoughtfulness. We remain because it is our choice. We are not bound by fear or duty. We have learned to see humans as beings who value our opinions, respect our decisions, and treat us as equals. That choice is worth more than orders. Few had expected the partner to speak so confidently. It was clear that Vila's words carried weight, not only for the humans but for the entire council. She had begun to represent a bridge between species, showing that autonomy and respect could coexist with guidance and mentorship. The next few hours were filled with debates, proposals, and questions. Humans answered patiently, explaining their culture, laws, and ethical standards. Vila stayed close, observing, learning, and occasionally speaking to clarify a point. Some of the other partners were more hesitant, still struggling with the concept of choice. One leaned slightly toward their human delegate, whispering, "I am unsure if this is safe." You have the freedom to decide. That is what matters most. You do not need to fear mistakes. Humans make mistakes all the time, and we learn from them together. They had explained, demonstrated, and invited participation. In doing so, they had gained attention, not through power, but through principle. When the session ended, the humans returned to their quarters. Vila walked beside Leora, her steps measured and thoughtful. "Your methods are strange," she said quietly, "but they are effective. You do not command, yet others listen. You do not demand, yet you are respected. I am beginning to understand why humans are regarded highly. Not lighter in weight, but in purpose. I am free to act, yet I do not feel lost. I feel engaged." One partner began learning to mimic human gestures, while another developed a talent for storytelling, weaving experiences from their culture with insights from humans. The humans noticed something remarkable. Their partners were not just learning, they were growing. The bonds between humans and partners deepened, but not because of obligation. It was because of mutual respect, shared experiences, and genuine curiosity. Every small achievement felt significant. Every question asked by a partner was a step toward understanding a world they had never truly known. One afternoon, Leora observed Vila sitting alone, studying a holographic projection of human cities. "What are you thinking?" Leora asked gently. Vila looked up, her eyes reflecting a mixture of wonder and contemplation. "I am trying to understand how humans organize their lives. Your cities, your rules, your freedoms, they are complex. And yet you thrive. I want to know how choice strengthens you rather than weakening you as I expected. Humans argue, fail, and sometimes hurt each other. But those experiences teach us resilience, empathy, and cooperation. Freedom is not weakness, it is responsibility. And when we are responsible, we grow stronger together." That is new, but it feels right. They had shown that strength could come from cooperation, that influence could arise from respect, and that progress did not always require control. Leora and her team understood that these small victories were only the beginning. The council year would be long, and many challenges would follow. Some species would resist change, clinging to their traditional methods. Others would test the humans, seeking weaknesses or inconsistencies. But the humans were prepared to demonstrate something powerful, that empathy, guidance, and voluntary cooperation could achieve results far greater than fear or force ever could. That evening, the human delegates gathered for a private discussion. They shared observations, reflected on the council's responses, and planned their next steps. Leora spoke first. "We have made progress, but it is fragile. We must continue to show that choice and respect are strengths, not weaknesses. We must demonstrate that freedom can create bonds stronger than any command could." Professor Amir Kane added, "Our partners are learning, yes, but we are learning too. We are discovering the power of patience, of listening, and of leading without dominating. That is something no alien civilization has fully mastered. It is our advantage. In my culture, I was taught that service defines value. I was trained to obey without question. Yet now I see that choice itself creates value. Humans have shown me that to be trusted, respected, and valued, one must also have the freedom to act independently. I am grateful for this." It was moments like these that defined the human approach, not through orders, not through displays of power, but through teaching, example, and invitation. She had hoped for progress, but this affirmation went beyond expectation. The night ended with quiet reflection. The humans and their partners looked out at the stars, contemplating the journey ahead. They knew that misunderstandings would persist, challenges would arise, and some civilizations would resist their methods. Yet they also knew that the foundation they were building, of respect, choice, and collaboration was unshakable. In the heart of the galaxy, humans had arrived not to conquer, but to guide, not through force, but through example. Their partners, once bound by obedience, were discovering autonomy, curiosity, and self-worth. And the galaxy, slowly but surely, was beginning to notice that humans were unlike any species it had encountered before. It was only the beginning. The lessons learned, the trust earned, and the bonds formed would ripple across civilizations, reshaping expectations and redefining power in ways that no one could have predicted. And at the center of it all stood humans and their partners ready to teach, to learn, and to lead through choice, respect, and freedom. The days passed quickly in the council chambers, and with each day, humans and their partners grew more accustomed to the rhythms of interstellar diplomacy. The humans observed carefully, taking note of the subtle differences between species, their cultures, and their ways of thinking. Their partners, too, were learning, not just about human behavior, but about the galaxy itself, its challenges, and its wonders. Leora noticed that Vila's curiosity was deepening. She asked questions not only about human customs, but about other species, their technologies, and their values. "Why do some species prefer isolation?" Vila asked one morning as they walked through the council corridors. "They have knowledge, yet they avoid interaction. Humans, we share everything, even when it is difficult. It requires trust, patience, and understanding. But when we share, we grow stronger together. We learn from each other. Isolation may feel safe, but it limits what we can achieve. You embrace complexity rather than avoid it." Professor Amir Kane watched one of his partners experiment with the council's communication system. The alien being's 4 hands moved with surprising dexterity, rearranging holographic displays and projecting new models for discussion. "Look at that," Amir said quietly to his colleagues. "They are thinking creatively. Not because we instructed them, but because we gave them the freedom to do so." Competition and secrecy had long dominated interstellar relations. Humans, however, proposed a cooperative model built on transparency, respect, and voluntary contribution. Leora and Vila were assigned to work with a group of partners from another species, known for their analytical minds but rigid social hierarchy. At first, the alien partners were hesitant, unsure how to interact with beings who had been taught to command and obey. Vila, however, led by example. She spoke freely, shared her ideas, and encouraged discussion rather than instruction. Slowly, the other partners began to respond, offering suggestions, asking questions, and testing new methods of collaboration. "This is different," one of the analytical partners admitted. "I am used to receiving orders, not ideas. I feel uncertain." Their shared designs were innovative, practical, and surprisingly elegant. The humans and their partners had demonstrated that trust and freedom could produce results faster and more creatively than rigid hierarchy ever could. Even outside formal meetings, the humans' influence began to show. In the council's public areas, partners were learning to interact independently with other delegates. They asked questions, shared experiences, and even offered solutions without waiting for instruction. Observers from other species began to take note. Some were intrigued, wondering if humans had discovered a new form of leadership. Others were skeptical, unsure if the humans' methods could survive scrutiny and pressure. One evening, Leora and Vila walked along a balcony overlooking the city below. The lights of alien architecture stretched in every direction, strange and beautiful, yet orderly in ways humans found unfamiliar. Vila spoke softly, almost to herself. "Humans teach without demanding. You guide without forcing. I do not understand fully, yet I feel empowered. I have learned to make choices I did not think I could make. Understanding yourself, your values, and the consequences of your choices, that is what makes a being powerful. You are discovering it too." Many species relied on traditional methods, commands, negotiations backed by threats, or unilateral decisions. Humans proposed a different approach: dialogue, compromise, and shared problem-solving. Vila observed quietly as Leora led the discussions. Humans listened carefully, asked questions, and encouraged each party to explain its perspective. No one was ignored, no opinion dismissed. Slowly, tensions began to ease. The alien delegates were surprised that the humans did not impose a solution. Instead, they facilitated understanding, showing that a resolution could be reached through patience and empathy rather than coercion. "Humans are unusual," one observing delegate whispered to another. "They do not demand, they do not threaten. And yet they succeed." Back at the human quarters, Vila reflected on the experience. I used to think strength came from control. Now I see that strength can come from allowing others to act freely. That trust can accomplish more than force ever could. That is the kind of influence that lasts. One afternoon, Amir observed a small group of partners from multiple species sharing stories about their home worlds. They laughed, debated, and exchanged ideas freely. "Look at that," he said to Leora. "They are learning from each other, not just from us. They are forming communities based on choice and respect. This is something new in the galaxy." Humanity had arrived not as conquerors or rulers, but as catalysts. Their methods were unconventional, yet effective. They were showing that collaboration, empathy, and voluntary engagement could achieve what commands never could. Vila approached Leora later that evening, carrying a small device she had been studying. "I have modified this tool," she said. "It allows delegates to share information more efficiently. I learned from observing human methods, and I added my own ideas. Is this acceptable?" "That is success." They simply demonstrated what could be achieved when beings were allowed to act freely, when trust was the foundation of interaction, and when cooperation was valued above control. Even the skeptical delegates could not ignore the results. Projects were completed faster, disputes were resolved more peacefully, and partners were more engaged than ever before. Humans had turned the galaxy's expectations upside down, showing that power could take many forms, none of them violent, all of them lasting. One evening, as Leora looked out at the stars, she reflected on the journey so far. They had not conquered, coerced, or dominated. They had simply shown what humans did best: listening, understanding, and respecting choice. Their partners were learning, the Council was watching, and slowly the galaxy was beginning to see that strength and respect could coexist in ways no one had imagined. Vila stood beside her, silent but thoughtful. After a moment, she spoke. "I am beginning to understand what it means to lead without commanding. Humans are remarkable. I feel that I have only just begun to learn from you." The council year was only beginning, but the foundations of something extraordinary had already been laid. Humanity and their partners were not merely participants. They were catalysts, guiding the galaxy toward a future defined not by force, but by choice, cooperation, and the power of trust. And so, as the night deepened and the galaxy continued its silent rotations, humans and their partners prepared for the challenges ahead, confident that their approach, unconventional, patient, and rooted in respect, would shape the course of interstellar relations for years to come. The council chambers were alive with movement and conversation. Delegates from countless civilizations wandered between tables, discussing projects, sharing ideas, and observing one another. Humans and their partners moved among them with purpose, their presence calm but noticeable. In every interaction, the humans demonstrated patience, respect, and a willingness to listen, while their partners had begun to assert their own voices, asking questions and offering insights that surprised even seasoned council members. Leora walked beside Vila, who had grown more confident over the past weeks. The alien partner now spoke freely during discussions, offering observations and suggestions, and occasionally challenging Leora when she thought a human approach could be improved. Leora welcomed it, understanding that this dialogue strengthened their bond and set an example for the council. Today, the council faced a new challenge, a dispute over shared planetary resources between two species that had long been rivals. Historically, such disputes were settled through threats, dominance, or rigid compromise, but the humans proposed a different approach. They suggested a series of dialogues facilitated by neutral delegates, emphasizing mutual understanding, compromise, and shared responsibility. The rival species were initially skeptical. Their cultures prized hierarchy and strict rules, and they found the human approach unusual, even naive. Leora and her partners entered the first session with calm determination, prepared to guide the conversation without forcing a solution. Vila, standing confidently beside her, observed and contributed, translating the human approach into terms the aliens could understand. "We are not here to decide for you," Leora began. "We are here to help each side understand the other. Only by listening and finding common ground can a lasting solution be reached. If we consider what each of you truly needs, rather than what each of you demands, we can find a path that honors both perspectives." The humans encouraged discussion, asking questions that probed assumptions and sought deeper understanding. They reminded the delegates that compromise did not mean weakness, and that listening did not require surrendering one's values. Slowly, the tone in the room began to change. What had started as a tense confrontation became a cooperative effort. Hours passed, and ideas were exchanged, modified, and combined. Vila suggested a solution that drew from the humans' cooperative principles while respecting the traditions of both species. The proposal was accepted cautiously, with room for further discussion. By the end of the session, the delegates were smiling, nodding, and even laughing. They had reached a preliminary agreement, not because of fear, power, or threats, but because of dialogue, patience, and mutual respect. "This is remarkable," one observer whispered. "They are solving a problem that would have taken months or years through traditional methods and without any conflict. I see now how choice, patience, and understanding can achieve results greater than orders ever could. Humans have taught me that strength is not measured by control, but by influence earned through respect. It is a principle that can reshape relationships across the galaxy." The partners began to take initiative, suggesting improvements to council processes, mediating disputes, and creating small projects that enhanced collaboration between civilizations. Their confidence grew, and with it, the influence of humanity's methods. One day, Leora observed a group of partners from multiple species discussing a new project for shared cultural archives. Vila spoke passionately, explaining her ideas for how to include narratives, music, and art from all cultures in a way that respected diversity while promoting unity. Other partners contributed, building upon her suggestions and incorporating their own perspectives. Leora realized that the partners were no longer just following human guidance. They were teaching one another, spreading the values of choice, collaboration, and respect independently. The humans' subtle influence began to ripple through the council. Delegates who had been skeptical of human methods started to adopt similar approaches in their own interactions. Meetings became more inclusive, debates more respectful, and agreements more collaborative. Humans were not imposing their culture. They were demonstrating a model that others could follow if they chose to. In the evenings, the humans and their partners reflected on the day's progress. Vila often spoke about the lessons she had learned and the insights she had gained. "I never imagined that guidance could be so gentle and effective," she said one evening. "In my culture, instruction is strict and mistakes are punished. Here I am encouraged to learn through exploration. I feel capable, valued, and respected. It is empowering." When someone is allowed to choose, they grow stronger, more thoughtful, and more capable. You are living proof of that principle. But the humans remained steady, using every opportunity to demonstrate that integrity, patience, and respect were not weaknesses, but strengths that could endure even under scrutiny. As weeks passed, Vila began mentoring other partners, sharing her experiences and encouraging independent thinking. She helped them navigate cultural differences, practice diplomacy, and explore their own potential. Her transformation was evident. She had gone from a reserved, obedient partner to a confident, thoughtful leader in her own right. One afternoon, a crisis emerged when a miscommunication threatened to derail a shared project. Two species had interpreted instructions differently, causing frustration and mistrust. Normally, such a situation would escalate into confrontation or formal reprimands. Humans proposed a different approach: sit together, share perspectives, and clarify intentions. Vila facilitated the dialogue, drawing upon what she had learned from humans. "We must focus on understanding, not blaming," she said. "If we listen carefully, we will find the solution within our shared knowledge." They had internalized the lessons of choice, respect, and collaboration, and were now spreading them independently. As the council year progressed, more evidence emerged that humanity's approach was creating change far beyond their immediate circle. Other species began experimenting with similar methods in their own interactions. The value of voluntary cooperation, patience, and respect became apparent, challenging long-held traditions of hierarchy and control. Even the council elders began to acknowledge the impact. They observed that disputes were resolved faster, projects were completed more efficiently, and interspecies relationships were improving. While some delegates remained skeptical, the overall trend was undeniable. The humans' philosophy of respect, guidance, and freedom was reshaping expectations across the galaxy. One evening, Leora and Vila stood on a balcony overlooking the city below. The lights of alien architecture stretched in every direction, creating patterns of brilliance that seemed almost alive. Vila spoke quietly, her voice filled with reflection. I feel different. I understand now that my purpose is not simply to serve, but to think, choose, and contribute. Humans have shown me that freedom and responsibility together create strength. And progress is not measured by obedience, but by understanding and cooperation. That choice, respect, and trust can create bonds stronger than any order or command. Humans had arrived not as conquerors, but as catalysts, and their partners were becoming beacons of the new way. As the night deepened and stars glittered across the sky, humans and their partners prepared for the challenges ahead, confident that the lessons of freedom, collaboration, and respect would continue to spread. The Council was not just a place for debate. It was a proving ground for a new vision of interstellar relations, one in which understanding and choice were the most powerful forces of all. The galaxy was beginning to notice, and slowly, inevitably, it was beginning to change. The Council year was approaching its final weeks, and the atmosphere within the chambers had changed noticeably. Delegates moved with greater confidence, discussions were more cooperative, and disagreements were addressed with patience rather than tension. Humans and their partners had become central figures, quietly guiding conversations, suggesting compromises, and demonstrating the power of choice, trust, and mutual respect. Leora walked alongside Vila, noting the energy in the room. Vila's posture was upright and confident, her eyes bright with focus. She had grown from a hesitant, obedient partner into a thoughtful, independent presence, capable of guiding discussions, mentoring other partners, and contributing meaningful insights. The transformation had been remarkable, and it reflected not just her growth, but the subtle influence of humanity's principles throughout the Council. "Look at them," Leora said quietly. "They no longer rely on us to lead, they are learning to lead themselves." Influence comes from understanding, trust, and guidance. That is something humans have taught me. Humans and their partners played key roles in each initiative, facilitating collaboration and helping all species see the benefits of working together voluntarily rather than under compulsion. One morning, the Council convened to discuss the future of partner assignments. Historically, each species had assigned partners to delegates according to their own cultural rules, which often involved strict obedience. The humans proposed a radical change. Partners should have the right to choose whether to remain in their roles, and any bond must be based on mutual consent. The suggestion was met with mixed reactions. Some delegates were cautious, fearing that giving partners freedom would undermine council efficiency. Others were curious, intrigued by the possibility that choice could strengthen bonds rather than weaken them. Vila was the first to speak. Her voice was steady, confident, and clear. "I speak from experience. When choice is respected, when partners are allowed to act freely, they become more engaged, more thoughtful, and more effective. I have learned more in these weeks than I could have imagined. My value has increased because I am trusted, not because I am commanded." They described how autonomy had allowed them to develop skills, contribute ideas, and participate in decisions that mattered. Delegates listened, surprised by the depth of insight and the impact of voluntary collaboration. Leora added, "Humanity believes that respect and choice are fundamental. We do not measure contribution by obedience. We measure it by understanding, effort, and willingness. Partners who are free to choose bring their best to any task, not because they are forced, but because they are valued." It was a significant change, one that reflected the growing influence of human principles throughout the galaxy. Vila watched as the decision was announced, her expression a mix of pride and reflection. "This is a turning point," she said quietly to Leora. "I have seen firsthand that freedom strengthens bonds. Others will now experience what I have learned. Choice, it is powerful." Yes, and it is only the beginning. By respecting autonomy, we create a system where collaboration is genuine, where trust is earned, and where relationships are built on understanding rather than obligation. Others chose to explore new opportunities, returning to their home worlds or joining new projects. Each decision was met with support, reflecting the values humans had consistently modeled. Vila chose to remain, not because she was required, but because she had formed bonds of trust and friendship with Leora and the other delegates. Her choice was emblematic of the changes happening throughout the Council. Bonds formed through respect, cooperation, and mutual understanding rather than hierarchy or fear. The final council session was a celebration of progress. Delegates shared achievements, reflected on lessons learned, and set ambitious goals for the future. Humans and their partners were recognized not as rulers or enforcers, but as examples of how integrity, patience, and empathy could create meaningful change. Leora addressed the assembly. We have learned together that strength is not measured by power alone. Influence is earned through understanding. Progress is achieved through collaboration. And the greatest bonds are those formed freely, with mutual respect. Let us continue to build a galaxy where choice, trust, and cooperation guide us forward. Delegates of every species understood that humanity had offered a new model for interaction, one that valued freedom, encouraged initiative, and rewarded respect. After the session, Leora walked through the halls with Vila. They passed delegates from multiple species engaged in conversation, laughter, and planning. The energy was different now. Cooperation was no longer tentative. It was a habit, a culture, and a shared commitment. The humans had not just participated, they had catalyzed a transformation. Vila paused, looking out at the city below. "I never imagined that such change was possible," she said softly. "I thought obedience was the only way to maintain order. Now I see that freedom, trust, and understanding create something stronger and longer lasting. Humans have shown me a different way to live, to lead, and to contribute. Together we have created something new, something better." They had arrived with little more than principles and patience, yet their influence had reshaped expectations, fostered cooperation, and proven that the most profound power lies in respect, choice, and collaboration. Even as the council year ended, the work was far from over. The systems they had built, the lessons they had taught, and the bonds they had formed would continue to influence generations of delegates and partners. The ripple of humanity's philosophy, patient, ethical, and empowering, would spread across civilizations, quietly changing the galaxy one relationship at a time. Leora turned to Vila, her expression reflective. "We did not come here to control or command. We came to show a different way, and we have succeeded." Across the galaxy, delegates were carrying the message forward. That influence could be achieved without coercion, that collaboration was stronger than force, and that the bonds built on respect and choice were unbreakable. As humans and their partners prepared to return to their respective home worlds or continue their work in the Council, they knew that their journey had changed not only themselves but the galaxy itself. The principles of autonomy, empathy, and cooperation would endure, creating a foundation for generations to come. Vila took a deep breath, feeling a sense of fulfillment she had never known. "I am free," she said softly, "and in that freedom I am stronger than I ever imagined. And in that we build a future where every being has the chance to choose, grow, and thrive." And as the Council prepared for a new year, filled with new challenges and opportunities, the galaxy knew one thing with certainty. Humans and their partners had shown that true strength comes not from force, but from choice, respect, and the courage to lead through understanding. The journey had begun as a simple integration into a council, but it had become far more than that. It was a lesson for all civilizations, that collaboration, autonomy, and empathy were not just ideals. They were powerful forces capable of shaping the course of the galaxy. And in that moment, as Leora and Vila gazed at the stars, they knew that they had helped create a future where every being could act freely, learn boldly, and contribute fully. A future where humanity's quiet but profound example would continue to inspire countless others for generations to come. The galaxy had changed, and it had done so without a single act of violence, without fear, and without coercion. Only through respect, trust, and the enduring power of choice. And in that change lay the greatest victory of all.